So as you can see, it's not a big beast or anything like that. And this is where there is a weak point, or at least there was a weak point on this tractor. We'll have a little closer look at that. Because I am out in the bush with this, this is the kind of protection that I want on my tractor. So there is 760 pounds. So all that being said, would I recommend this tractor? No, I would not. Welcome to Retired for Life. I'm your host, Brian. I retired a few years ago after 30 years in a factory job as a machinist in a millwright. I needed to rediscover what life could really be like. When we purchased this property, the house had stood empty for over a year, and the property had been badly ravaged by poor logging practices. Since my retirement, I've been working to renovate the home and restore the surrounding forest to its natural beauty and attract wildlife back to the property. Join me as I learn about nature and working with wood to create the backdrop for this new chapter of our lives. Well, today we're going to take some time and talk about this little tractor. This is a Kubota BX23S. Now, I've had it for 5 years now. I got a note from Kubota, basically warranty related and that type of thing, telling me that I've hit the 5-year mark, and that's great. Now, I've not done a full review on this tractor at any point in time because when I first got it, I really did not have a lot of tractor experience, but since having it for 5 years now, I feel like I can pretty confidently talk about this tractor. Now, I'm not a farmer. I don't run the tractor every day. I'm a hobbyist, so that's the point of view that we're going to be looking at. This tractor runs an average of about 100 hours a year, so not a huge amount, but it's enough that I've figured out a lot of things with the tractor. So let's start out by talking about the basics of the tractor. So this is a 3-cylinder diesel engine. It produces 21.3 horsepower. So as you can see, it's not a big beast or anything like that. So as I've said, it is a diesel engine, so it runs on diesel fuel. Be careful that you don't put gasoline in it. If you do, by accident, don't start it up. Pump that tank dry before you do anything. If you start this thing up with gasoline in it, you've got a whole new problem. So the capacity of this tank is somewhere in the neighborhood of 6.5 gallons, which is pretty good. Basically, you can put a full jerry can into it. And that will last you quite a long time. For me, unless I'm running a PTO implement like the wood chipper, I'll be a few weeks before I need to put diesel fuel into this tank. Now, the thing to keep in mind with diesel engines, they have a long stroke. There's a lot of compression in there. That's where they get the power from. This actually has less rated horsepower than my lawn tractor, but the lawn tractor is a gasoline engine. It has not got the capabilities of a diesel. So a watch out for a diesel engine is you don't want to be lugging it and putting a big heavy load on it in low revs. That is really tough on it. You will hear it start to really pound if you're putting a really heavy load on it and you've got your revs way down. A rule of thumb for me is I don't do anything under 2,000 RPM on it. And if you look at the speedometer, there is a couple of reference points right on the speedometer. It tells you what RPM you should be running when using the loader and the backhoe. So that's 2,500. And it tells you what RPMs you should be running when you're using the PTO. And that, as you can see, is around 3,200. So as you can see, I don't have the backhoe on here right now. I just took the snowblower off. So when you're purchasing equipment to run off of your PTO, you need to check the PTO horsepower output for the tractor. Now this one is 17.7. Yeah, it's lower than what the engine is because you've got all that power coming back through the transmission. So what you actually get at your PTO in general on tractors is going to be lower. So the weight of this tractor, when the backhoe is on, comes in at 1,570 pounds. Now for me, and I would advise anybody with a tractor like this, make sure you get your rear tires loaded. That means they put a type of liquid in there. It's called beet juice. There is a number of different names for it, number of different types of fluids that go in it. The idea is the fluid won't freeze, and that adds a fair bit of weight to it. Now this is a small tractor, so the wheels are not very big, so you're adding about 130 pounds to your weight when you've got your tires loaded. And because this tractor is small and relatively light, it is a really good idea to have your tires loaded to help counterbalance anything that you're carrying at the front of the tractor, whether it be with forks or a grapple or a shovel. That helps keep the back end of your tractor down. Now the width of this tractor is about 55 inches, so it is pretty narrow. Again, small tractor. And a big watch out for that means this tractor can get very tippy. If you're planning on taking it into the bush or something like that, where you're not on a flat surface, you need to be really careful about it. Now, a lot of people will put spacers behind the back wheels, and that's a good idea. I haven't done it yet. I haven't really found the need for it. And the one thing with spacers is it does extend your back wheels out farther, but that does put more leverage on the rear axles, which will put a little more stress there. And if you get a little carried away with those spacers, you could find yourself having problems like seals leaking and that kind of thing, and possibly even damaging the rear end of the tractor. So you need to be careful with it. When I put spacers on, I'm probably going to put nothing bigger than 2 inches on it. And the other thing to keep in mind, because this thing does tend to be tippy, don't drive around with your roll bar down. Put it up. It doesn't take much to put up. It's really easy. When you're doing something like taking it into a garage or that kind of thing, and it's going to be in the way, sure, fold it down. It only takes a minute to do. But if something happens, you want that roll bar up. It could very well save your life. And the other thing to keep in mind, when you're carrying a load, especially in the front end loader, don't carry it around for any great distance way up in the air. There's no point in doing that. Carry it down low. Low to the ground as you can get it without it bouncing on the ground as you're going. That helps keep your center of gravity low and reduces the chance of the tractor tipping over on you. Now the speed of this tractor is really very low. When it comes from the factory, you're going to find it goes about 8.5 miles an hour forward and about 6.5 miles an hour backwards. Yeah, that's slow. Now you can make an adjustment to that on your treadle pedal. Now this type of pedal is something that we are going to talk a little more about in another video. If you're not used to a tractor, this is not like a gas pedal, and it doesn't work like a gas pedal. Now the transmission is what's called a hydrostatic transmission. In other words, it's basically hydraulically driven. You're not shifting up and down through gears and that type of thing. You don't really have a gear shift, with the exception of your high-low range. Now here's your high-low range lever right here. Now you do need to be stopped to change that. So you have to be pretty careful. Don't try changing that on the go. Your transmission won't be very happy with you. And you can take it in and out of four-wheel drive here as well. And again, you need to be stopped when you're doing that. And when you first get the tractor, it's going to be pretty stiff when you're trying to take it in and out of four-wheel drive kind of thing. So it's just something that will free up over time, and you need to get used to it. And I would suggest that if you don't need the four-wheel drive, don't drive around with your tractor in four-wheel drive. You're just putting all that extra wear on those components that you don't need to do. But when you need it, use it. Now, speaking of four-wheel drive, this tractor also has a rear differential lock. You can push down on this with your heel and have both of your back tires driving at the same time. And again, don't do that while you're moving. And that differential lock can be really handy if you're dealing with a really muddy situation or a snowy situation, that type of thing. You can push down on that and it will help get you out of a jam. But don't lock it into position and leave it there. The one thing you don't want to be doing is driving around with that differential lock on, especially on hard ground like pavement or that type of thing where there's very little give to it. Because what it does is it locks your two back tires together. Now when you're turning and that type of thing, the idea of the rear end of the tractor is to let those tires move independently of each other a little bit so that as they're turning, you're not jamming things up. Because when you're turning to your left, your right side tire is turning farther and faster than your left side tire. Now your steering is power steering, so you don't need the knob on the steering wheel and that type of thing as you see on some tractors. Those knobs were originally for tractors that were really tough to steer. A lot of the older tractors didn't have power steering. So you put that knob on there to really give you something to grab onto. Now, it can be a nice to have. Some people like to have it. They find it easier to drive the tractor with it, and that's great. But you don't need it. I don't use one. A lot of people don't use one, but a lot of people do too. So that's just a personal preference. Now, your ground clearance on this tractor is not huge. Tires are fairly small, and the closest thing you've got to the ground is your front axle, and it's about 8.5 inches off the ground. And this is where there is a weak point, or at least there was a weak point on this tractor. We'll have a little closer look at that. So when you're out in the bush driving around, driving through sticks and branches and things, tall grass and whatnot, you are, of course, going to find that occasionally things are going to be rubbing along the front here. And with grass and whatnot, you wouldn't think it would matter too much. But when I bought this tractor in 2019, these boots on the steering tie rod ends were an issue. This was definitely a weak point. Now, I was lucky. I found very shortly after I had the tractor out one day, I came back, had a look, and the boot that was on here on both sides were both torn. So these obviously had to be replaced. And because I caught it early, I thought, okay, great. I'm not going to lose the tie rod end. There's virtually no damage to it. Nothing got into it. So I'll just buy a set of boots and take the tie rod ends off and change the boots. But Kubota would not sell me boots for it. And I don't know whether they do now. I suspect they don't. But they wanted to sell me complete tie rod ends with the same boot on it. And those were over $100 a piece. And I thought, well, that's just ridiculous. There's got to be another way. I did find, after doing some research on eBay, a place where I could buy replacement boots that were a much heavier rubber for $12 a set. I bought 2 sets. I put 1 set on, and they've been on there for 4 years now, and I haven't had any more trouble with that. So that's a weak spot to watch out for. Now, the other thing that you want to keep an eye on with the front end of this, remember, your 4-wheel drive, so there's lots of gears and things in this front axle. you want to watch this oil level. Now, it is kind of a classic issue with these tractors that you get some seepage from the axle. Now, I have seen reports of people having a real issue with it seeping quite badly, and they've changed the type of oil that's in there. Now, normally from the factory, the oil that is in there is the same type of oil that's in your transmission, which is basically a hydraulic oil, and it is fairly thin. So one of the things that I noticed right away, because I had heard of this issue, was after driving the tractor for just a couple of days, I pulled that dipstick out and checked it, and it was practically off of the dipstick. Now, this is a really kind of oddball shaped case to fill with oil because of all the ups and downs and that type of thing. So when you get this thing, drive it for a little bit, I wouldn't say more than a day, and check that oil level. When you change this oil, which you do have to do periodically, do the same thing. Change your oil, make sure that after running it for a short period of time, you check that oil, and do that daily for a couple of days. You are going to find that the oil level has dropped as the oil spreads across and properly fills the rest of this casing. Now, some people have changed from the hydraulic oil to a much heavier oil. And from what I understand, Kubota is fine with that. That shouldn't affect your warranty, but make sure you check with your dealership before you do that and have them give you the okay. So one of the other watch outs with this tractor is it is a small tractor, the wheels are small, you don't have a huge amount of ground clearance. So if you're taking this out into the bush or into rough terrain, you need to keep in mind the bottom of this tractor. Now, to help to keep the hydrostatic transmission oil cool, there's a little white fan underneath this tractor. That fan is not very big, and it is plastic. Now, there is a small, very light duty kind of skid plate that does protect it. And if you're doing things like just working in your yard and that type of stuff, that's probably just fine, but it doesn't hurt to have a look at it every once in a while. But if you're doing stuff like what I do, and you've seen me doing this, clearing trails, moving rocks, all that kind of thing out in the bush with this tractor, because of that, I've added quite a heavy duty skid plate to the bottom of it. Now, this is not a piece of sheet metal. This plate is made up of two pieces of checker plate, so it is really heavy duty, and it protects the bottom of this tractor. Some of these skid plates that I have seen that you can put on the bottom of the tractor are basically nothing more than sheet metal. And if I was to hit something like go over a rock and not see the lack of ground clearance or have a big log flip up underneath it, that type of thing, that sheet metal skid plate might not save you. So you can see this checker plate skid plate here. It is heavy duty. It covers your drive shaft, covers all the systems underneath here going through to the back. It protects your oil filter because that kind of sticks out there. That can be a real weak point. I think you can see the oil filter back in there, and it goes underneath the rear axle, so it gives you lots and lots of protection. But it depends on what it is you're going to do. Because I am out in the bush with this, this is the kind of protection that I want on my tractor. Now, the lift capacity of this tractor in the statistics is about 680 pounds, but they do kind of quantify that by saying that that lift capacity is back behind the pin. And what they mean by pin is the point where your bucket pivots back and forth. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't do too much lifting on things back behind the pin. I want to know what I can lift with this thing on the front. So what we're going to do is pop the bucket off, put the forks and a skid on, and we're going to take it over to where my wood pellets are stored, and we'll see how many bags of pellets that we can lift with it. So this will be a real world test. All right, let's get that set up. So one of the really cool features with this tractor is this quick connect system on your front end loader. So I had pulled these two levers up before I came in with the bucket, and that meant I can just drop the bucket off, back away from it, and then pull into my forks, get the plate on the front end loader in the right position, just drive in, pick it up, and then jump out, push down these two levers, and you've got it. So one of the things to keep in mind when you're looking at the lift capacity of your tractor, they're talking about nothing on the front end whatsoever. So we need to take into consideration whatever it is that's going on your front end. Like in this case, we've got the forks on here. Now these forks weigh about 220 pounds. And then we've got about another 20 pounds for a skid. So we're already at 240 pounds and we haven't lifted anything even off the ground yet. And the other thing to keep in mind, the farther out your load is, the more leverage there is, the farther away it is from your lift point and the more power it takes to lift it. So if you could lift, say 500 pounds in your bucket or on your forks, if you got out another couple of feet or even out another foot, you may no longer be able to lift that load just because of the leverage involved in it. All right, let's start putting some pellet bags on here and see what we can lift with it. So we're just going to go at this bit at a time. We'll start with 3 bags of pellets on here. Now each bag weighs 40 pounds, plus we've got the weight of our forks and the weight of our pallet. So that will give us a load of 360 pounds. Now I'm thinking that we shouldn't have any trouble lifting that. Let's see what it does. All right, there's our 3 bags. So I'm going to run the RPMs up to 2,500, which is the recommended RPM for the front end loader. That's what we're going to use throughout this test. All right, that looked easy. Let's put another 3 bags on. All right, we're up to 480 pounds now. So it had to work a little harder at that, but still lifted it right up. 3 more bags. All right, that's 600 pounds. Let's see what we can do. we're topped out. That's as high as I can lift that. That's pretty good. We're about 4 feet off the ground. I don't think it's going to lift 3 more. Let's try 2 more. There's 680 pounds. Wow. I'm actually quite impressed with that. Let's double check our calculations. So we know we're starting out with 240 pounds with the forks and the skid. Then we've got 11 bags at 40 pounds apiece. So there is 440 pounds just with the pellets, plus 240 pounds, gives us a total of 680 pounds. So to tell you the truth, I didn't think we would lift that much. That's pretty impressive. Let's put 2 more bags on, see if we can still lift it off the ground. Just barely, but we are off the ground. So there is 760 pounds. I'm really surprised it lifts that much. And of course, the higher you lift, the more power it requires, because you've got to push more of that hydraulic fluid into your cylinders. That's when you'll get your failure. It will only be able to push so much fluid before it hits that bypass and your hydraulic oil starts going past rather than into the cylinders. Now there is a kit that you can buy to increase the lift capacity of these tractors. It's a shim kit that you can install very easily to the bypass valve. Now, to me, I would not recommend doing that. I know people do it, and generally speaking, it's pretty skilled operators that are doing that. So unless you're a skilled operator, you need to really think twice before you do that, because keep in mind that you've got all that weight on the front of this tractor, and if you push it too much, the back end of this tractor is going to get out of balance and it's going to come up on you. Now I have come close to that a couple of times while using the grapple on the front of the tractor and putting logs onto the sawmill. You have to move really, really gently when you've got this kind of weight on the front of your tractor. If you stop quickly with this weight on it, that back end is going to come up. And if you don't have your seat belt on, you got a good chance of being launched right out of that tractor seat. So be really careful with that. All right, we'll get these pellets restacked, and we've got just a couple of more points to go over with the tractor. All right, folks, so we covered a lot of things in this video. We've touched on most of the issues that I have come across while operating this tractor. There is one other thing that I wanted to add, and that's the hydraulic controls. Now, I have had experience helping down at my neighbor's farm. I've driven a big 100 horsepower tractor, the 75 horsepower tractor. They've got front end loaders and that type of thing on them as well. And I have found that the hydraulic controls on this tractor are really very touchy. You have to really be careful when you're picking something up or tilting backwards and forwards with it. If you move that stick too quickly, it's going to jerk. It's going to move really, really fast. So be gentle with it, especially if you're doing something that's fragile or something that's tippy or that kind of thing, and you don't want to be bouncing stuff all over the place. Be gentle on that stick that's controlling your hydraulic system. So am I happy with this tractor? Very. I have said on a number of videos how impressed I am with how well this tractor works. Now that does not mean that I would call this the be-all and end-all of tractors. I am not a person who is going to get locked into a specific brand on anything. So I am not a Kubota person. I am not a Stihl person. I'm not a DeWalt person. What I look for is a product that is going to operate the way I need it to operate, regardless of who makes it. My advice is don't get yourself locked into a brand name. I would suggest that that's a mistake. I've seen people say, this is the best in the world. You haven't tried everything in the world, and it depends on what it is you're looking for. So all that being said, would I recommend this tractor? No, I would not. And I say that because when I bought this tractor, I did my research. I figured out what it is that I'm going to need this tractor to do. And after looking around for probably about a year off and on, was when I settled on this particular tractor. Because by then I had a pretty good idea of what it is I was looking to do with the tractor. Now the Kubota tractor is a little more expensive than some tractors, and for me, because of how hard I've been working this tractor, I did want something of a little better quality, and I believe the Kubota is a better quality than some of the other less expensive tractors that are out there. And again, it depends on what it is that you want. If you're not going to be doing the real heavy work that I do with this particular tractor, you don't need to spend the extra money on a tractor like this. You can get something that's a little more budget friendly, maybe not as well built, but if you've done your research, it will do the job that it is you're looking for. So keep in mind what it is you want to do with your tractor. How much weight are you going to be lifting? Where do you want to go with your tractor? What kind of conditions are you going to be operating your tractor under? Is the tractor big enough? If you need to be lifting higher weights, my suggestion to you is don't do something where you're fooling around with the pump. To add more lifting capacity to your tractor, get a bigger tractor. That way you're not going to be risking damaging the tractor by overpowering things or damaging yourself by flipping your tractor. So I have not been paid anything by Kubota for this video. I've not been given a discount for doing any of this, buying anything that I have bought from the Kubota dealership near me. This is all straight up what I think of these things. Now, that being said, if Kubota wanted to send a mini excavator down to me for testing, I'd be happy to do it. So do your research, figure out what it is that you want, and then go hunting for your tractor. So we haven't actually talked about the backhoe on this tractor. We're going to do that in a separate video. And we'll talk about the different implements that you can use on the tractor. So I hope you folks have found the video interesting, maybe a little helpful, and if it is, that would be great. And if you've got any comments that you want to offer about this tractor, or if I have missed anything, or if you've had some other issue with this particular tractor, let us know in the comments what it is you have found. All right, so that's going to be it for today's video, folks. Thanks very much for stopping by. Remember to be safe out there, be good to each other, and we will see you out on the trails the next time.